Roseanne devotees, Roseanne fans, Roseanneaholics and Roseannemaniacs, Roseannephiles and Roseaddicts. Welcome to Roseanne Retrospectives. I'm Pat.
I'm Blake.
I'm Scott.
This is the podcast where we tangle with the Roseanne subdimension. What is the Roseanne subdimension? Well, in the series finale, the Roseanne subdimension is revealed when we learn that Roseanne has really been writing a book about her life. And what we have been watching is her version of the story. In an effort to distinguish the Roseanne subdimension from the Roseanne reality, we review each episode of the show. Today's episode is The Memory Game, the show where Jackie can't keep her mouth shut, or spills the beans, or spills the corn, however you want to put it. So some housekeeping. Rolling Stones came out with an article called Endgame, TV's Best and Worst Series Finales, and it nominated Roseanne as a worst series finale. Here's a quote from the article. Starring a blue-collar family with painfully realistic problems, Roseanne feels more radical now than ever. The show's fever dream final season, however, jumped a pool full of great whites. After an absurd storyline in which the down-and-out Connor family wins the lotto, the finale revealed that much of what had come before had simply been made up. It turns out that Roseanne was a writer who'd scripted a happier outcome for her family, swapping her girls' significant others while keeping her own husband, John Goodman's pitch-perfect Dan, alive past the heart attack that had killed him. A number of shows, from Newhart's callback to an earlier 70s sitcom, to St. Elsewhere's conceit that its entire run was an autistic boy's interior life, have done wonders with the "it was all a dream" concept. But both tossing what made your show work out of the window and then telling us after the fact that none of it mattered is damn near unforgivable.
But we're here to offer forgiveness.
And love this show in spite of that.
Exactly. Or because of it.
Personally, that series finale is why I wanted to start watching the show in the first place.
Right. It adds a whole layer of depth that encourages rewatching. It was all a dream.
I think the quote misses the subdimension part of it.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's easy to confuse when you see that for the first time that Roseanne is just talking about Dan's death. But then when she mentions the two daughters' love interest being switched and Jackie's sexuality being switched, you start to get an idea that this was more like pervasive throughout the series.
Yeah, it wasn't just the last season.
Right.
All right, so let's, you want to begin?
Let's go.
So scene 1 in the kitchen. How'd it start? How'd the show start? I, forgot.
Well, the show starts, this episode starts with Dan talking on the phone with the mystery person, and then Roseanne walking in with a bunch of groceries, and he's starting to, he wants to get a photo taken, a family photo.
But in reality, the photo is probably just a framing device.
Right. He wants a family photo because there's a class reunion coming up, and he wants to look impressive.
Oh yeah, they're gonna send this photo in for I don't know. Are they doing a new yearbook or something?
I don't know.
It's unclear what the photo is for.
Yeah,
well, it didn't need to be clear because Roseanne was just using it to set things up.
Mm-hmm.
So the reality is probably they're planning on attending this reunion.
Mm-hmm. They're gonna be seeing a lot of old friends, old foes, old flames, maybe. They go into the other scene while they're talking about the, getting this photo.
DJ's just randomly throwing his lasso around.
Mm-hmm. So DJ and Darlene are in there, and they're all excited about the idea of the picture. DJ is, presumably
stuff.
Lassoing.
He's throwing his lasso just all over stuff without even trying to catch anything, and then he slurs, I'm a cowboy.
Right, because we know in the reality that the kids get into the liquor cabinet far too often.
He's clearly drunk.
It's a pretty easy thing to do in a household.
Right, there's no lock on that
In
liquor
a
cabinet.
household where the liquor cabinet is every cabinet because there is liquor hiding in many
Precisely.
spots.
So they're just telling the family it's time, we're getting this photo taken. Everybody's all excited.
Then Roseanne is at work. Oh yeah, so this scene was really, it blew my mind the first time I saw it. They're all upset because they don't have any paper towels. There's a part where Crystal she makes eye contact with the camera during a rant in which she says that management only wants them to worry about paper towels so that they won't be thinking of the fact that they don't have benefits or a living wage and other things like that. And it's weird. It's just like thrown in there.
Yeah,
In the novel, that's where Roseanne got on her soapbox and started trying to preach her own message.
absolutely. It's shoehorned in, and it doesn't have anything to do with the rest of the episode. It's just this like vehicle for social commentary.
They even punctuate it with at the end of the scene they have a brief mock strike because they don't have paper towels. Management immediately gives in.
Giving in being Booker convincing Creepy Pete to go get some paper towels.
Yeah. But it's like that whole scene was just there to put some political agenda out. It was awesome. And yeah, it's Roseanne.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, getting really, really preachy.
Yeah, basically the entire movie. It's like the entire movie Avatar, basically.
Then there's this scene where they're all getting ready to get their photo taken. They're wearing their nice clothes. Roseanne emerges and says, "This is the real me."
Which is like a super metatextual moment because it isn't. It's Roseanne in the novel.
Right. Well, the reason she says it is because they are commenting on how pretty her outfit is. The
Wait,
girl.
her outfit. Just want to bring this up. Her outfit is this blue and bright magenta.
Right.
I just want to make a note.
It's like a giant robe. Like that.
Yeah, it looks very loose on her.
Most of Roseanne's the outfit she gets all the compliments on are like giant robes. They're not the striking image of beauty to me, but
Jackie walks into the house to do her laundry, which she does every Saturday. Dan tells Jackie to leave.
And that's probably actually a really big fight between Dan and Jackie.
a big fight and a frequent fight. This is a fight that happens every time Jackie comes over to do the laundry, every Saturday, I'm sure.
Dan hates Jackie for some reason.
Some reason. We can only guess why in the reality.
So then, in the kitchen, they're in the kitchen again. Jackie slips to Roseanne that Dan took a woman out, a young woman in high school, a girl out, when they broke up, briefly.
Phyllis Zimmer.
Which in reality is probably prompted by Jackie still being mad at Dan.
Yes. It could be that Dan he's planning on having an affair with Phyllis Zimmer at the high school reunion.
We can imagine that Dan is really so obsessed with how he comes across for this reunion because he wants to impress some old flames, including Phyllis Zimmer. I assume Dan had many old flames in the high school.
But
Right.
he was on the phone with somebody at the beginning of the episode. What if it was Phyllis Zimmer?
Could have been.
He's planning a sleep together fest.
A tryst.
A tryst. He's planning a tristy tryst for the reunion. That's why Roseanne's pissed, because she just put it together. She just figured it out. She just read between the lines.
Mm-hmm.
So
Is Phyllis Zimmer the woman who Dan had the foot fetish for in the first episode?
No, I don't think so.
Yes,
Okay.
why wouldn't it be?
That's
Why
one of
couldn't it
the
have
other
been?
women that...
Maybe it is in real life.
Yeah, how could he have slept with more than 2 women in his life?
I think he's
Dan.
probably slept with many women.
How?
He was a catch in high school. He was probably... he strikes me as someone who's really popular in high school and then just went off the deep end after high school and lost
He
it.
lost himself. He no longer had meaning.
Like, he hurt himself and he wasn't going to be a football player. He like didn't get a D1 scholarship and he's going to play like D2 and try and like walk on at a D1 school in the next year, but then he like hurt his hamstring and he was out for the career and
No, man. What happened was he probably injured himself, But he impregnated Roseanne on their prom night, and they had a shotgun wedding. Neither of them wanted to marry each other, but their parents were like, "You have to." That could be why they're so resentful to each other.
See, that could make sense because Roseanne does mention that at their wedding that she was drunk and she meant to leave but walked the wrong direction. Play it as a joke. Likely not a joke though. And Dan also comments that they got married way too, or that people criticize them for getting married way too young. So that leads me to believe that you're right.
Yeah, I just thought of that.
But I think Dan probably was sleeping around in high school too.
I don't. So, in the kitchen, Dan must explain to Roseanne what happened. And he says that they stopped at Watch Out Hill.
But probably Roseanne finds out rather than Dan actually just tells her.
Huh.
I like to believe that Watch Out Hill is a really crappy pseudonym Roseanne gave for the location where they made out. Because, like, why would a bunch of high school kids not call it Makeout Hill?
Fuck out Hill.
Fuck up Hill.
Fuck uphill.
Watch Out Hill, though, just
Pregnancy
is like,
Mountain.
Pregnancy Mountain. That's probably what Roseanne calls it. And then there's that scene where Roseanne walks out of the kitchen in a huff, unsatisfied, and Dan whispers, "I'm sorry."
That is Roseanne in reality desperately needing that apology, so writing it in.
Absolutely. There's no apology given. And
Yeah.
that's why it's not even, like, to her in an area where she can hear it. She's walking out of the room.
It's a very literary
Yeah.
apology.
I'm sorry. And then he whispered, "I'm sorry," because I know he was sorry, and he just didn't say it where I could hear it.
Later in the living room, Dan asks Roseanne if they're getting a divorce.
In reality, it was an actual just threat rather than a question.
Yep. And this is something they grapple with on a day-to-day basis.
Right, this is a frequent fight.
This is another we're getting a divorce scenario that they encounter frequently.
Yeah, like the episode, it seems like they kind of made up, you know. I mean, they had a little fight where she's all like, everything in the last 15 years was lies, wasn't it? And whatever, but they make up. But the reality is probably this a huge freaking blowout, you know?
Right, because Roseanne's reaction is pretty extreme for something that seems kind of trivial.
Rather than just not talking to Dan, she probably really blew up at him.
Oh, yeah.
And they definitely didn't cuddle up at the end.
No, chairs were thrown.
Yeah, that was thrown in there.
That was how
yeah.
this sequence of the story ended.
Mm-hmm.
Cliffhanger.
It was just a fight.
It was a fight, and they woke up in the morning, and they still just had that, like, weird animosity that they always have for one another.
It's just ugly.
It was a bad scene.
Rather than how it really ends.
And they keep calling back to this trip to Yosemite they took, where they, like, that's the only other good photo they have to submit to the, I don't know, future yearbook
In
thing.
which they're mooning people.
Yeah, I think they're mooning Old Faithful, which is
okay.
odd.
Yeah.
So they're plastered in this picture.
Probably very
I
drunk.
mean, you don't moon a, like, landmark at a national
geyser.
park.
And their children have seen this photo, too, because their children makes references to it.
Yeah, this is a legendary event in their
That's
marriage.
inappropriate. Why would you show your kids a picture of your naked ass mooning a
Yeah.
landmark? That's just disgusting.
It's odd. That's odd. That's an odd parenting decision.
Oh, hey, remember that episode where I think it was the episode 3 when they went to the seafood restaurant and they
Yes.
They were like, "All right, kids, we're leaving," and then they leave, and then the kids immediately run into the bedroom to look through their dresser drawers. What if that's when they saw that photo? I mean, if they're in the habit
I like
of going,
that. I like the sequence of that.
if they're in the habit of going through their parents' dresser drawers, then they've probably seen everything they keep in their dresser drawers.
That's true. That makes sense.
Including the naked photos of themselves.
Right.
Right.
Naked Polaroids, because I guess that's the only way you could take naked photos back in the day, huh?
Yeah, unless you knew someone with a studio where you could develop them.
Yeah,
Or you
which
had
they
your own-
wouldn't. There's no way they would know anybody like
Naked Polaroids.
that. That's disgusting.
Oh, I hope
God.
that. And the whole thing ends with them basically saying that that's the photo that they're gonna submit to the weird reunion future yearbook thing.
And that's just a framing device. I mean, I think that was just tacked on in Roseanne's novel.
Okay,
So what do you think really happened, though?
Yeah.
Like, at the end, like, do you think that they end up going to the reunion and Dan does end up sleeping with Phyllis Zimmer at the reunion?
I think this
Behind
is just a
Roseanne's
story about
back?
a really bad fight.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is a story about Roseanne learned something that made her really mad, and they almost got divorced, and they didn't, and it was just like another really bad blowout fight in the Connor household.
I think so too, because it's like she shoehorned in that additional resentment about women being treated more poorly at the workplace than men, and not having their paper towels in their restroom being filled up as much. So I feel like it was just, this was kind of a vehicle for her to express resentment.
I agree with that.
Yeah, sounds about right. I think that's every episode.
Yeah,
though.
I mean, that's like the whole show.
This is just a really intense, sad, drawn out, argumentative, real life occurrence.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's why this isn't a great episode.
But I love the fact that that's primetime television, because that's real.
The part where she's like, Dan, did you do it with her? I was like,
Just
whoa,
do
you could
it,
say
yeah.
doing it on TV in the 80s?
You
Oh
can
my
say,
god.
You can
wow.
say do it, but you can't say make out Hill, I guess.
Or fuck Hill.
You still can't say fuck Hill on TV.
Okay, well, imagine that you're listening to this podcast 20 years from now when you can say fuck Hill on TV.
There's a show called
When
One
there's
Fuck
a show
Hill.
called Fuck Hill. One Fuck Hill.
I don't know about that in 20 years.
Okay, 50.
Maybe.
Will TV exist in
Calling
50
it.
years? Will
Oh.
anyone remember Roseanne in 50 years?
They will remember this podcast.
Oh, I hope that they only remember Roseanne from this podcast.
That'd be great.
So they'll like try to recreate what happened in the episodes based on our retelling.
They're
of
going to
the
lose
reality.
all the actual footage of Roseanne. I like that. I like that reality. So now is the part of the podcast where we talk about what our favorite part of the episode was. I'll go first. My favorite part is DJ dressed up as a cowboy trying to lasso things.
I was gonna say that one. Damn it. Alright, my favorite part is when Crystal stares directly at the camera for a brief second and while she's doing her workers' rights speech.
My favorite part also involves Crystal. So when they're at Wellman Plastics, initially somebody's like, "Whoa, Roseanne, I hear you've been keeping Dan up late at night," and everyone's oohing and awing at her like, "Oh, you're doing something sexual," but she's not. But she calls out Crystal when she's oohing her out, and she calls her Porno Head, and I just love that name because I think it's just like it's like if somebody made a porno out of a razor head, and they weren't very creative. That's what it would be called. I just think Porno Head's a pretty good insult.
You're right.
It is a great insult.
And with that, I guess this podcast episode is over. You should check us out on the Twitter. We're at Rosie. Wait, what's our Twitter address?
Roseanne Retros, I think.
Oh, is it Rosie Retros? Or
Roseanne Retros.
Roseanne Retros, and we're on Tumblr at Roseanne Retrospectives, and we're on the Facebook, also Roseanne Retrospectives.
We're on everything.
We're everywhere. To all people.
Thank you and good night.